Ah, the lovely tones.
Is there words to the song, Ron, or was it just a musical?
Just the music. Everybody loves Raymond.
You want to make up
the
some
brother
words?
goes by on the conveyor belt saying, everybody loves Raymond.
Ray Fittipaldo of the Post-Gazette, vying for the nicest man in Pittsburgh sports. Jerry DePaula, way up there, as we know. Jeff Hathorn. Marc-Andre Fleury, long gone, so perhaps Ray has replaced him. Ray, you just put out a list of 10 free agent targets, and Bobby Wagner wasn't on it, and I'm wondering why. Hightower was. Do you think he's out of their price range? Do you think it's unrealistic? Do you think they're not interested?
I do think he's out of their price range, Joe. The two inside linebackers that I mentioned, Dante Hightower of the Patriots, Leighton Vander Esch, former first-round pick of the Cowboys. I think you can get those two guys like on mid-tier deals where it wouldn't break your bank. And I think going out and getting a guy like Bobby Wagner, even at his advanced age, it's going to cost you. I mean, he's coming off a contract where he was making, $16 million a year or something like that. I'm sure he's going to want to stay in that ballpark. So, for me, Joe, if I'm going to go out and break the bank, I'm going to go out and get a center, right? Or, something that's really going to stabilize my offensive line. Do they need an inside linebacker? Yeah, but I don't think they need a guy like that as much as they need a leader and a bona fide stud like they do on the offensive line.
Before I throw the questions to my esteemed partner, Ron, let's get one thing straight here. The amount of money they have to spend. I saw Cabali, I think, today say depending on restructures and such, releases, whatever, it's anywhere from $30 million to $70 million. Is that how you'd classify it?
Yeah, I mean, they would have to restructure a lot of contracts to get it up to 70. But now they're right around 30. That's before Schobert. You could release Zach Banner. That would get you to 43 or 4. Then you could restructure guys. Cam Hayward, T.J. Watt. There's all kinds of guys that you could restructure their contracts and create more money. So you'll get a pretty good indication on Monday. If you see the restructures coming fast and furious, I think big players. But if they sit back and they don't choose to do that right away, then maybe they'll target some of these mid-tier guys instead of those guys.
Ray, you're extremely garbled.
Yeah, why don't we have you and Horst try back again? We're having a hard time hearing you there, Raymond. I want to ask Ray, he talked about, you get a leader on the offensive line. I mean, wasn't Wagner a captain in Seattle? I mean,
yeah.
I wouldn't mind a leader and a captain on the defensive
end
if he can still play. And to break the bank, when you have a lot of cap space to bring in one guy like that, I don't know that breaks the bank.
Maybe the idea is to bring in several mid-tier guys instead of one high-price guy. I don't know, but I'm with you. I'd rather stabilize the middle of my defense than the middle of my offensive line. I'd like to try to do both.
Right.
There's a lot of centers out there. I mentioned that AFC North story, Ron, that I think it was in The Athletic where they broke down every team and who they might lose. J.C. Tretter could be available.
He's a center with the Browns.
And
right?
Bradley Bozeman for the Ravens. Two starting centers who are pretty. I mean, there's going to be a bunch of centers on the market. The Steelers can stabilize themselves.
And plus that Jensen in Tampa, right?
Yeah, I think he's the highest price guy. I think you might have other choices. Let me ask you this. I think the first question on offense, that's not a quarterback question, that the Steelers need to answer.
All right, we got Raymond back here.
Is whether Kendrick Green is going to be a center or not. And it seems like not.
Ray, let's try this again. I said you talked about breaking the bank for Wagner and also bringing in a leader captain type on the offensive line. Well, my point is I think he was a captain in Seattle. If he can still play, I don't mind paying a little bit for him to solidify, one position that I think you have a real big need at. And if you have cap room to do it and still do a few other things, why wouldn't you want a guy like Wagner?
Well, I think it just goes to, the premise, how many guys can you have on your defense who are among the highest paid positions in the NFL? You already have that with T.J. Watt. presuming you're going to do that with Minkah Fitzpatrick, right? So it just comes down to how you want to build your football team. And I think you can go out and get a captain-like player on defense just as well as you can with Bobby Wagner as you can with a guy like Dante Hightower. So that was my only point there. I know Hightower is 32, and he's probably on the back end, but I think you can accomplish that by signing him and not spending as much money as you would on a guy like Wagner.
So are you saying that Wagner is going to be so coveted that he is going to be one of the highest paid inside linebackers in the NFL?
Well, he just came off a deal where he's making $16 million, right? Even if he's going to get paid $13 or $14 million on this deal, like when you have guys like Watt making what they do, and Minkah as well, I just don't know if it's feasible. And then you have to go and say, does Bobby Wagner want to come here, or can maybe he hook on, with a contender where he knows he's going to get in the playoffs and he knows he's maybe going to get another shot at the Super Bowl, whereas with the Steelers, with a new quarterback, I don't know, what his viewpoint or what his perspective would be on the Steelers. So I think that's certainly a part of the equation as well.
All right, Ray, let's put quarterback aside, and I know that's awfully hard to do, but let's put it aside. Of all the needs, rank them in order of importance to you? Offensive line, defensive line, wide receiver, inside linebacker, secondary. Rank them for me.
Yeah, I think offensive line first, Ron, and I think you'll see an outside free agent come in. They'll try to come in and stabilize that situation. I think number two is the secondary. When you look at their corner and their safety situation, now they might decide to bring some of their own guys back, so you might not see outside free agents come there, but they got to figure that out. Joe Hayden, Akello Witherspoon, and Terrell Edmonds are all free agents. So that for me would be number two. I just don't get the idea that that's going to be solved by outside free agents, as much as the offensive line is. And then number three, I'd probably say inside linebacker. But again, I wouldn't go out and spend a ton of money on an inside linebacker. I would go out and spend most of my money on an offensive lineman and then just sort of fill in the pieces, inside linebacker, secondary with some mid-tier guys.
Ray Fittipaldo of the Post-Gazette on the Nemacolin fan hotline. You can text us on the Edgar Snyder and Associates fan text line, 412-928-9370. Edgar Snyder and Associates reminds you to text responsibly. All right, so everybody's talking about free agent centers, including us. Is it a foregone conclusion that the Kendrick Green as a center experiment is over? If it is, does he even become a starting guard, or are we looking at the real possibility that they wasted the 87th pick in the draft, Ray?
No, it's not over. They like Kendrick Green's versatility. Listen, Joe, if they go out and they get a free agent guard for $8 or $10 million a year, I think they would be okay with having Kendrick Green go back and be in their center and see if he can improve. They like the versatility there. I don't think they've given up on him. But we also know that he really struggled as a rookie, and that might be a little bit of a gamble too. So
isn't he blocking the same guys as a guard as he would as a center a lot?
Right. Hey, listen, I'm with you guys. Like Kendrick Green, if he doesn't play center next year, he's not assured of a starting position at guard. They probably going to draft a guy, and then maybe he can compete with Kevin Dotson for one of those other spots. But I think it's trending to where maybe we could start to question that pick a little bit. But you know how it is, guys. They're not going to give up after 1 year on a guy that they drafted in the third round.
All right, this stuff all starts next, I guess, Monday they can tamper, and Wednesday's the day you can actually do something. Do you think the Steelers are going to be aggressive in this, or they have been more, I guess, recently, or are they going to, wait a little while and see what the market bears and then try to bring some people in?
I think they will be more aggressive than usual, and, I don't know if they're going to be that team that makes the splash move at 4 p.m. on Monday, or maybe they'll sit back and they'll be more active on Tuesday and Wednesday. But I think a big move is in the offing. And again, I don't think they're going to spend like 18 or 20 million a year on the top guys, but I do think that they're prepared to spend money on a starting caliber player at one or two positions, and then they'll fill in from there, with the rest of their cap space. But yes, to answer your question, Ron, I more active period for the Steelers in free agency than it is, during a normal, typical Steelers type of year.
How about Honey Badger?
Again, I think it probably costs too much. I mean, how many safeties can you pay, right? I mean, listen, Joe, it'd be a different story if they don't plan on bringing Minkah back, but I think they plan on bringing Minkah back. So I just, all the high price tags that all these scenarios that are being thrown out there with guys like the Honey Badger and Bobby Wagner, I just don't know if it's feasible from a cap perspective.
Do you think they're going to do something with Minkah then before the season, or are we going to have another T.J. Watt where he shows up but doesn't really practice?
Yeah, I mean they want to get through free agency. They want to get through the draft, and then they'll tackle the Minkah thing. But they said the same thing last year about T.J. Ron, and then he wasn't signed until 2 days before the season. So I think we're going to go down that road again. It's going to be a tough negotiation. The franchise tag for a safety this year is not a lot. It's only like $13 million a year, and Minkah's going to be looking for, I think, $16 or $17 million a year. So there's a lot of ground that they got to cover there. There's probably a figure in the middle there that they're probably going to come to, but I don't think they're going to come to it in July. I think more likely August or like last season with Watt, early September.
All right, Ray, let's get to the most important position on the field. Obviously, the Steelers have sat out the game of quarterback musical chairs so far. Do they jump on with a free agent? And if so, are they jumping on the Trubisky train?
I was waiting for the whistle. I didn't get it.
Don't you ever dare, horse.
Train.
I think there's a chance, not a strong chance, that they could go after a guy like Trubisky. But in the end, I think, the number 3 and number 4 quarterback, and not in that order. The guys that they add beyond Mason and Dwayne Haskins, I think it might be sort of a mid or a low tier signing. I don't think it's going to be a guy who's going to come in here and command a lot of money. So I think fans might be expecting something more. I think the fans might want to get a little bit excited next week, but I'm just not sure they're going to get that big name that they want.
I still don't know that they're going to draft a quarterback either in the first round, Ray. I'm thinking it's going to be offensive line or defensive line. And I know you did another mock draft this week, right? This was 33, 34, something like that?
It's actually only number 2, but, yeah, I mean, Ron, I'm with you. I think rebuild in the trenches, get stabilized up front so you could play the type of football that you want to play, and then, maybe get by with a quarterback who can be a bridge quarterback this season, and then maybe really attack that position next season. So, hey, listen, there could be a scenario there where Pickett or Willis drops to number 20, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I think all these teams are still in position to draft those guys. Washington still might want a quarterback because Wentz is only under contract for 1 year. Seattle is in the mix now. I mean, there's just as many teams that need a quarterback now as there was last week. It's just who instead of, the number, So it's going to be a tough deal to get a top quarterback, a Pickett or a Willis at number 20.
Man, to me, it would be a hell of a thing to go out and spend $40 million in free agency, fortify your defense, and go with Mason Rudolph at quarterback, Ray. I mean, I don't know that I consider Trubisky a big name, much as I love him, but you don't think they'll bring in somebody like Trubisky?
Oh.
Winston, Mariota, somebody? Maybe should they be in on Garoppolo?
Well, we'll have to see how that surgery plays out, but you're talking $27 million a year there. So, hey, listen, if they're not big spenders in free agency, then maybe that's their move. listen, if Trubisky is 10 or 12 million a year, and you don't get him, then like what's left? Are you going to pay Teddy Bridgewater that much? Is he all that much better than Mason Rudolph? And there's some guys you could probably get for even less who were backups last year, and maybe you just want to bring them in to see if they can compete with Dwayne and Mason rather than supplant them. So I think fans are going to be disappointed. I think there's a small chance that they'll get a guy like Trubisky, but I think more than likely, like the third and fourth quarterbacks they're going to go to camp with will sort of be like in the same ballpark as Dwayne Haskins and Mason Rudolph.
Well, it seems like the whole league, everybody who was at the Combine and the Senior Bowl and all of that, is linking the Steelers to Malik Willis. So do you think that they're high on Willis? Do you think they would trade up to get Willis? Do you think they would certainly draft him if somehow he fell to 20? Do you think they're enamored with him like so many people say?
I'm not convinced that they like him more than they like Kenny Pickett. I think they like Kenny Pickett, just as much. And they go in a different year. If you had more draft capital and you didn't have so many needs, then maybe they could make that move. Like maybe you could move into the top 10 ahead of Washington and get a guy like Willis at number 10. Maybe you could do that. They just don't have the draft capital to do it this year. And then to compound those issues, they have all those needs across their roster that they have to get straightened out as well. So I just don't think, from a team building perspective, that it's likely to happen. But never say never. We'll see what happens in a couple of months. I just don't think it's likely right now.
Ray, the big story in the NFL this week was Ridley's suspension for the entire year for betting $1,500 on football games. What did you think about that? Too harsh? Just right? Whatever? What do you think?
No, I think you've seen it in other sports with Pete Rose, and I know he bet on the Falcons to win, but you just can't have that. It could compromise the league at a different point. They've always come down hard on those guys, going back to Karras in the 60s, Paul Hornig in the 60s. It's just a big no-no, and I think even though gambling is more involved now in the NFL than ever, even though that's still the case, you just can't have players betting on NFL games. I think it just compromises the game, and I think they were right to do it.
Now, what happens if Stephen Ross is found guilty of $100,000 a game to lose? He's got to be thrown out of the league, right?
Absolutely. And I said that a couple of weeks ago when I think I was on your show, guys. I just don't know how you can prove that. Unless there's emails or text messages from Ross to Brian Flores that where you could prove that, if it's a he said, she said, or he said, how are you going to, have the ammunition to toss him out of the league? So I'm with you. I think if there is proof of that, then he's gone. You got to get rid of him. But I'm just not convinced that's going to happen.
All right, Ray, a little twist on free association today, and the rules are these. We're going to go the Steelers starting offensive line left to right. You can say an incumbent's name. You can say free agent or draft pick. You don't have to say who those free agents or draft picks will be. Are you ready?
I am ready.
They're starting left tackle.
Dan Moore.
Starting left guard.
Free agent.
Starting center.
Kendrick Green.
What? We just had a conversation about all these free agents out there.
I know, but listen, you might not get Ryan Jensen.
All right.
And if you don't get Ryan Jensen,
maybe I broke the rules here,
I just
Ron,
found
right?
it interesting, though, Ray. You're saying Green at center, but not Kevin Dotson at guard, huh?
I just don't think that he's performed to the point where you can definitely consider him an incumbent. No.
Right guard.
Draft pick.
Right tackle.
Bridge player, draft a draft pick that can come in and unseat that guy in about 8 games.
Are Chooks and Banner both gone?
I think you might bring one of those guys back, but I think you bring them back and you think that they're just going to be there for a little bit. They're not. Neither of those guys are long-term answers. You got to go out and draft a guy who's going to be your next right tackle.
Thank you, Ray.
See you, Raymond.
All right, guys. Talk to you later. See you.
What a nice man he is, huh,
I
Ron?
love Raymond. Everybody likes Raymond.
Kendrick Green back at center. I disagree with that. I'm not buying that one.
I'm not either.
It's 10:21. Time brought to you by Century3Chevy.com. Few years back, the Cleve Brownies got rid of a really good veteran player, and the Steelers jumped all over it. Could history be repeating itself? With two players the Browns might not have back, might not bring back, and I'm wondering if the Steelers should jump on one of them. I'll tell you who they are next on Cook and Joe.